Today I'm going to show you the Xero integration with TaxCycle, but it's going to be way more than just that. You'll get to see the TaxCycle end-to-end tax preparation experience. First off, I'm going to show you how you can import Giphy data from Xero into TaxCycle. Giphy data goes into a T2 or a partnership return, T5013, so corporate or partnership return. And then I'm actually going to lead you through completing that corporate tax return. Now, this is a super basic return, but it will highlight some of the review tools that we have and how easy that process can be. And then I envisioned for the rest of it, as we lead towards the second part of the Xero integration, just to show you how that data can flow into other return types. So if you're preparing the corporate return, it's possible, especially if you've got someone who has a small business, that you need to prepare the T4 slips as well. And that person actually may not only be an employee, but could be an owner in the business, and you need to prepare their T1. So we're going to show you how to move that data and how it all works together in TaxCycle with a tool that we have that's called Slipsync. And then finally, I'm going to show you how, if you're using Xero in your practice to manage the billing and invoicing for your clients, how that you can take that invoice from TaxCycle and push it back into your Xero account and then invoice them from there. So TaxCycle does a really neat job of tracking the time you spend on a return and the forms that are in it and building an invoice based off of that. And we can make it really quick and easy for you to put that back into Xero. So let's get started. I'm going to flip right over to the demo. Let's take a look at how connecting TaxCycle and Xero can speed up preparation of a corporate tax return. For this example, we'll use a T2 return and import the Giphy data from Xero. In TaxCycle, carrying forward brings the relevant prior year values and reusable information into the current year. This is the fastest way to start a return in TaxCycle. You can carry forward files from a range of competitor products, so if this is your first year using TaxCycle, you can keep using your old data. On the TaxCycle Start screen, click Carry Forward. Browse for the prior year file and click Open. TaxCycle creates a new file and carries over the relevant data. You can tell which values are carried forward because they appear in purple text. Once you have your file ready, you can go ahead and import accounting data into the tax return. In a T2 return, this information goes into Schedules 100, 101, and 125, where you report the data using codes from the General Index of Financial Information, also known as Giphy. The mapping for these codes is set as part of the chart of accounts in Xero, so that TaxCycle knows which codes go with which amount. To start your import, go to the Data menu, click on Import Giphy, and then select Import Xero Giphy Data. This will connect you to a web browser where you can sign in to Xero. The first time you connect TaxCycle to Xero, you need to authorize that relationship. Click Allow Access to proceed. When you see the message that the connection is successful, you can close your browser and return to TaxCycle. Back in TaxCycle, you will see the Giphy Import dialog box. If you have access to more than one business through your Xero account, you may see those businesses here. TaxCycle will attempt to filter the list to show the business that best matches the file you have open, based on the name and the year end of the business. Or you can search for the business you would like to import. Select the business data you'd like to import and click Import Giphy Data. This pulls the data down directly from Xero. Close the dialog box to return to the Giphy statements. In the current year column, you will see the data that came from Xero. If you make a change to something in Xero and you need to update the statements in TaxCycle, repeat the process to import again. If you remain signed into Xero in your browser, you will not need to enter your username and password again. And you do not need to authorize TaxCycle a second time. Now that the corporation's data is in TaxCycle, you can finalize the return. TaxCycle automatically uses the data on the Giphy statements to complete the related forms and schedules. Review messages help you complete any missing information. For a simple return like this one, this process can happen quite quickly. First, let's review the messages on the S100. Fields highlighted in yellow show you where there is an issue on the form. The most critical message here is that we need to enter the opening balance for the retained earnings. If you carried forward the return, TaxCycle suggests entering the closing balance from the prior year. Click on the link in the message to enter this information. Next, since dividends were declared, TaxCycle reminds you to enter that information on Schedule 3. Once again, you can do this by clicking the link in the message. Review messages also appear in the Review sidebar. The Require Attention view shows all the messages preventing you from filing the return. Double-click on a message to jump to the form that applies. You can also apply quick fixes to messages from the sidebar by clicking on the light bulb that appears when you hover over the message. This makes the process for resolving issues more efficient, as you can focus on the sidebar and work through each message in order. Some review messages point out memos or other suggestions that don't have a quick fix. You can choose to sign off these messages by clicking the check mark on the right-hand side. If you jump to a field that has a blue triangle in the corner or turns red when you type, this means it contains calculated data. Always try to find the source of the field so you don't override that data. Press F6 on your keyboard, or you will find a blue hyperlink nearby to jump to the related worksheet. When dealing with provincial returns, like the AT1 for Alberta, TaxCycle will suggest similar changes and guide you to apply them. For data carried forward on GIFI Schedule 141, you are reminded to review the answers to the questions before signing off the message. In fact, this is true of the entire return. While TaxCycle helps you correct errors before filing return, it is ultimately the responsibility of the tax preparer to review the return in detail to ensure it is accurate. To file the return in TaxCycle, go to the Transmit sidebar. Each type of return that needs to be filed has its own box in the sidebar. Any outstanding review messages appear in this box as well. Like in the Review sidebar, you can double-click on the message to return to the field and resolve it there, or apply a quick fix. Once your client signs the T183, whether by electronic signature or on paper, confirm receipt of that signature to start the filing process. Now the return is ready to transmit. Before transmitting, agree to the terms and conditions of filing the T2 return, as well as those for any returns from other jurisdictions. At this point, you can file each return individually by clicking the Transmit Now links, or file them all at once by clicking Transmit Selected at the bottom of the sidebar. Now your tax return is complete. If you prepared this T2 return for a corporation that also needs T4 or T5 slips created, you can easily use the corporate information in this return to start the related T-slip filing. Go to the Data menu, and then choose a slip type that you want to create. In this case, we're going to create T4 slips, and then you have to choose the year as well. Doing this will take the relevant corporate information over into the slip return and reduce your need to enter the data for the issuer. Of course, now in the T4 return, if you have a small number of slips to create, you can easily enter that data on the T4 slip data entry form. However, if you've got a larger number, or if you already have that information in a spreadsheet, you might choose to import it from that spreadsheet into TaxCycle. To do this, you want to make sure you have the correct template for importing the data on slips in TaxCycle T4. What you need to do is on a blank slip, you at least enter something to make that slip active first. So I just put a first name in. It doesn't matter. It's not going to take that data from the field. What we're doing is just activating the form so that we can do the export. And then back on the Data menu, you can go to Excel Import. And the first thing you need to do is say, create an Excel template. The screen that comes up allows you to choose what fields from the slip you want to include in this template. We've selected those we think you need by default, but if you need to add others, you can either scroll through the list or search for a particular field by number or box line. I'm just going to go for the defaults right now and click OK. After clicking OK, TaxCycle creates the Excel template and asks you where to save it. You can click on this link in the dialog box to open the template in Excel. When you open this file in Excel, you'll see a series of columns in the export worksheet of the file. It is important that you match the format on the export worksheet to import the data correctly. The top 5 rows of the worksheet are reserved for data about the import and about each field. Let's quickly expand these so you can see more of the information. I'm just going to auto-fit the column width so that you can see what we've got there. So the top row indicates the type of slip that we're creating. The second line gives you a line or a box number. Now, these fields at the beginning are just for identification, so you can see that you won't see the box numbers till you come further along, but you can see here, box 31. The third line gives you a description for the fields that don't have a box number, or for those of us that can't remember what they're for. And the fourth line is the field code. This is really important. This is what links the data in that column to a specific field on the slip. And then finally, a key field, when this row is set to true, this is used to match the data with existing data in a slips file, and this allows you to repeat the import and make corrections. So, for example, the social insurance number we always list to true, so that if you make a correction in the spreadsheet, it won't create a duplicate slip. It will replace the data that is in that slip so that you can correct it. Okay, I'm not going to go into the details about how to massage your data to get it into this spreadsheet, but I am going to show you a spreadsheet that is already completed and just point out a couple of things. So once you get your data into this spreadsheet, there's a few things you need to know. So each row from row 6 onwards is one slip. We'll create one slip in TaxCycle. So here I have several rows of slips. Now, it is important that you use the correct format for each cell. So let's work our way over here. So the import might not work correctly if you put text into a field that is meant to contain a number, for example. For checkboxes, like if you want to create a copy of this slip or this is reduced DI, you need to use yes for checked and no for unchecked. Or you can leave it blank if it's unchecked. For drop-down lists that would appear on the form, you can just enter the value that would be in the drop-down list. In this case, for example, I've put the province of employment as Quebec for one of the slips. In the case of the province of employment, it's a little bit interesting because you can also set this default on the front of the info worksheet in the T4 module, and then it will automatically populate the province of employment for all slips. So in general, if you're doing that, I would recommend you only enter the province of employment in this column if it is different than the default on the info worksheet, which is what I'm doing today. So I'm going to save this file, and then we'll go on with the import. Back in TaxCycle, go to the form. Make sure you're on the T4 slip to start with, in case you've moved around. Go to the Data menu again, click Excel Import, Import Excel Worksheet. And we're going to go find this, because I put the data in a slightly different place, and open. And you'll notice as it comes in, it'll give you some error checking. So it might ignore a field or two if something's wrong. You can go back and fix the file and then bring it back in if you'd like. I'm going to ignore them for now and move on. And on the left-hand side, you will see all the slips that you just imported. Now, so it turns out, of course, in this T4 slip return, I have a couple of slips that relate to the small business owners of Stampede City Entertainment, the Lalondes here on the left-hand side. I can make this even easier now to get that data into their T1 returns if I would like. So what I can do now is just go to Publish to Slipsync in the Data menu and say Publish T4 Slips. We call this Slipsync. It puts the data in a file on your computer or on your network. And then when you open the T1 return for that client, we'll let you know that there's data there that you can import right away. When you open the client's T1 return, you will see a bulletin letting you know there's data from that T4 return. This appears at the top of the form section of the window as a dark bar, and it'll tell you where to import. You can also notice on the data menu that the Slipsync button will light up. You can click this here if you prefer. So I can quickly import the information, and it opens up the dialog box so I can compare with what's on the slip. So if I've already done AFR, I have a chance to validate that data, and I click OK. And then you can see the data has come straight in. At this point, I can continue preparing this return and file it. So let's speed up this moment on a bit of a time lapse. You'll see that the process mirrors very similar to the one that we used earlier when filing the T2 return. Now that everything is ready to file in all the returns, I want to show you something special about the way you can e-file in T1 in particular. If you have a family like this one where you've got Victor, Susan, and Kevin, you don't have to click around between the returns and e-file each one individually. We have something called Family Transmit. So you can go to the Tools menu up here, or under the File menu even, and click Transmit Family. Now what this does is replicates what was in the sidebar for each client in one window so that you can see all the status at the same time and transmit them all at the same time. And under here, just like in our transmit sidebar, if a particular taxpayer had a T1 e-file and also had to file in Quebec, or they had a T1135 for foreign income, that would all appear in here so you can file all of the return types for the whole family all at once. So let's quickly go and do that. So first off, you'll notice that you have to confirm the signature when you file a return, either whether you've received an e-signature, and you can of course request e-signatures with our product called TaxFolder if that interests you as well. You can check that out, or with DocuSign as well, or you can do it with a product completely separate from TaxCycle if that interests you. But if you haven't done with an integrated product like TaxFolder, you do have to specify what type of signature you are confirming here. So in this case, let's say he sent it to me by e-signature, and I'm just going to confirm it. Now on the left-hand side here, you can also have this automatically happen if you know that you have them already on file with you, and then you don't have to go through and click all the boxes one by one. So let's give this a try. Let's transmit now. And there you go. It was that quick. And now if you have a notice of assessment that's available, you can click on this little link and it will take you out to pick that up from the CRA as well. So we've completed the filing of the return, and this is where we need to get back to our Xero integration. Now, TaxCycle has something already in it before we connected with Xero, which allows you to invoice directly from the client file. So if I take a look, every client in TaxCycle, if I click F4 here, and this is across both T1 and T2 returns, they have what's called the billing worksheet. And this worksheet calculates, well, what the client owes you for your services. And you have a lot of flexibility about how to go about invoicing the client. First off, you can set some options. Let's take a look in options. You need to go through and set a couple of options. You can set prices for each individual year. So here I've got my 2020 prices, and I also have the option to invoice by schedule. That means by the forms used in the return, or by the hour. And if you look at the bottom of the TaxCycle window, you can see it automatically calculates the amount of time that you are working on the return. So you can use this to bring together an invoice quite quickly about the time you've spent or the effort required by entering your prices into here. Also in options, you need to go up to the invoicing page, and this applies to all returns. Not, I should say that first off, the price you can set by year and by return type. So you can be quite detailed in how you want to do it. So you can set for T2 or for T1 and be quite specific. Now, if you go up to the invoicing options, this applies to everybody's returns. So whether they're T1 or T2, and I mean, this is your invoice number. This is where you set your GST and QST numbers if you're in Quebec. And here I was using this in a French situation, so this would normally say GST. And these are what will appear at the bottom of our templates. This has no relevance for Xero, but I'll correct it up. You can choose the sales tax that you want to use, and you can invoice using Xero here. And then if you choose Xero from this list, you have the option to connect to Xero. And there we go in. We allow access just like we did before. Now, of course, at this point, you may have seen there that I'm doing Stampede City Entertainment. I happen to be using a similar account, but do understand that this is your account. This is where you're invoicing your clients. So remember that. It means that you're sending these invoices into your account that you use for your practice. And under here, you'll see a few options. So you can set the default organization, and in this case, I only have one. You can choose what to do with new contacts and whether to include or exclude tax, the default account that it needs to go to, and what you would like the line description and item code to be in Xero itself. And then when I'm back on my billing worksheet, so let me just show you how the billing worksheet creates an invoice for the client. And this is what we call the client invoice. And you see it's just for Victor Lalonde. And it shows the same detail, all calculated and ready to go, as you would see on the billing worksheet. Now in family returns, you have a couple of other options. You can do a family invoice, which shows all the family members. And there's a joint invoice, which would show the spouses together. Now, if you're back on the billing worksheet, you have similar options to choose how you want to export this invoice. So in this case, you could go and export the client invoice, the joint invoice, or the family invoice. And I'm going to do that right now. And it's asking me now what I want to do with the contact. And I'm going to create the contact as my default. And there we go. I am ready to go, and it is invoiced over in Xero. And I can go in there and then add anything or change anything and send it on to my client.